everyone, Kelly here, and recently I posted a video with the 25 books that I want to read in 2025, but I wanted to give myself kind of another challenge this year. I would rather accomplish that 25 books than finish all of these, but I do really want to encourage myself to read bigger books this year. And it just is, now I have all my books out so I can see them, and I can see that I own a lot of bigger books that can be intimidating sometimes because it feels like a commitment, but then I need to remind myself I can spread them out. I can read other books intermingled with larger books. And so I decided that I was going to pull 12 books off of my shelf and try to finish one large book a month. And even if I can't finish, like if one of these takes me like 3 months to, like one of the really dense one takes me 3 or 4 months to finish, maybe I can finish a couple more bigger books that are more like fantasy and fun in that meantime. But I would really like to start reading some of those bigger books because I don't think I read, other than like a couple audiobooks I read last year, I haven't really been reading many big books. So I also wanted to set myself up for success by not just picking all of the largest, I didn't go down and just be like, okay, let's start at the 1,000-page book and go down because, then I would have, Way of Kings. But I still need to read Mistborn, and I don't want to read Way of Kings yet. So I didn't just pick the most big, because then I would also have 4 giant classics, and maybe I shouldn't read Anna Karenina and some of these other really dense classics all the same year. That's probably not going to happen, and I probably will fail that. So I really made a mix. I have, a couple classics, a couple nonfiction, and then some series that I want to continue, some fantasy, trying to mix in some different stuff. So there are going to be some 550-page books that are very fast-paced. And then there are going to be others that are going to take me longer to get through. So hopefully that'll make it a little more achievable to try to finish about 12. If I accomplish even 9 in the year, I think that would be good. So let's start off with the ones that would be a little more intimidating, like the classics and the nonfiction. So the kind of denser classic that I picked for this year is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And I picked this one because I've enjoyed the other Steinbeck that I've read. I read Mice and Men a couple years ago and really liked it, but that's obviously really short. I read Grapes of Wrath in high school, and I remember liking it, but that was so long ago that I don't even know if I would still like it now. But I thought, knowing that I've read The Pearl before and liked it, which is also short. So I thought, since I know I've liked the shorter things by this author, let's try the big classic. So that's my big kind of denser classic on the list. And then my kind of easier classic is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. And this one I'm actually reading with my best friend. She and I have read a classic together the last 2 years. 2 years ago, it was Les Mis. Last year, it was The Lord of the Rings. And so this year, we decided to read something that we wouldn't have to remember a bunch of names. And since we both have seen Little Women before the movie, we figured this will be a lot easier to read. The Lord of the Rings has so many names to remember, and even like Les Mis, there's a lot of characters and things. We wanted something a little bit of an easier classic. So this is the one we're going to read this year, or at least the first half of the year, because I think this one will go much faster than those other ones we read. And then on to biography. I have 2 very large biographies on my TBR, and I chose this one. So I have this one, Leonardo da Vinci, and I also have Hamilton. And I decided to go with this one because I think it'll be fun to look at all of the visuals. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of pictures. This is an extremely heavy book. This is going to be one where I need to sit down to read it because it is full color pictures because of all of his art and his drawings and everything. So there is a lot of visual content, but I thought that visual content would help me to get through it. So I do want to read this. This is by Walter Isaacson, who is pretty famous for writing biographies. And I had a friend personally recommend this as a biography. So I would like to read that biography. And then the other nonfiction, I only picked one other nonfiction to put on this list. I picked Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. And that's because I have read the young adult version of this that Jason Reynolds retold. And I really enjoyed that. I learned a lot from it. So I think it's time to graduate to the adult version of this book. This is one of those I think I would split out because it is kind of going through history. And so this could be the book that I take all year to read while I do some of these other faster ones in between, because I think this will be pretty, intense, being very about history, and then history that obviously is not happy history since it's about racism. And then we have a couple books that aren't fantasy. Basically, that's what I'm going to say, because the rest of these are fantasy. So the ones that aren't fantasy, that are fiction, I have The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. I've read one other Kate Morton, and I enjoyed it. She writes kind of like gothic, historical, just slightly gothic, like a little bit of a mystery. This one takes place in 1913, and I had started it at one point and put it down. I think oh yeah, I even have my bookmark. I didn't make it very far. I made it 44 pages. So I want to start this and give that a go as kind of like my historical fiction one. And then I have a horror pick. I have House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. And a lot of people have read this and said it's really interesting, you know, because it has like a book within a book, and it has like sometimes weird ways to read this book. And it's like one of those you have to read in physical form, which is probably why I haven't picked it up, because often when I want to read a big book, I will listen to it on audiobook to get through. And this one I have to actually physically read. So hopefully this one will get done this year. Maybe this should be in the fall, but I don't know. I think this could also be a good winter book as well. I think horror can work well in the winter months as well, so I could read it sooner. And then moving on to fantasy, we have the category of books in a series. So books that I have already started the series and want to continue. And the first one I have is Bloodhound by Tamora Pierce. And this is the second book in the Becca Cooper series. I actually just finished the first one like a week ago. So I want to like keep the momentum going. And this is also like a good example of how this book is 550 pages, but it looks a lot smaller than some of these other ones. So it's just so funny, like the quality of the paper and the size of the font really change how big something is. So yeah, the first one took me a long time to get through because these are longer books, and it's all written in a diary format. So the chapters are really long because, you know, it'll be like focused on one whole day and everything that happens in that day. And so it took me like almost a month to read the first book. So I want to continue that series, continue the momentum. I have a series that I had started a long time ago. This is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, the second one in the Mistborn books. And I think the first one I read in 2018, 2019. It was a while ago. I did like reread half of it last year, so I probably would want to keep rereading that, the rest of the first book. But I was doing that on audio, and then I would like to pick this one up because I do want to read more Brandon Sanderson to get to like, you know, his giant Stormlight archives, but I feel like I should finish Mistborn first. And then a trilogy that I would finish is The Beauty of Darkness by Mary E. Pearson. And this one, I think I just kind of lost a little like steam on this series. It took me a long time I loved the first book. It took me a long time to finish the second book, and I still enjoyed it, but then it just wasn't compelling me to immediately pick up the third book. So I need to do that. And I usually listen to these on audiobook, or at least I listen to the second one on audiobook. So I feel like it'll go quickly. I still remember the characters. And so I need to read it now this year to make sure I continue to remember the characters and finish off a series. And that's the other reason why I need to read Nightfall by Shannon Messenger. This is book 6 in the Keeper of the Lost Cities. I feel like I'm far enough away from the first 5. I think I finished the 5th book maybe 2 years ago. And I think if I wait any longer to continue this series, then I should just give up on it because I'm going to forget what's happening. Like, I already don't think I really remember what happened in the last book, but I remember the characters. So I think I can jump back in, hopefully. If I get into this and I am lost, I'm not going to reread 5 giant books, because even though these are middle grade, they are huge. Like, I think this is an 800-page book. I'm not going to reread 5 of those books. So if this doesn't happen this year, then probably I'm done with this series. All right, and then I have a couple that are first in the series that I would like to try. And this book I have put on my TBR, like even if I didn't put it on physically, I put it on my mind that I'm like, I really want to read this book almost every month in the last year because I got it for Christmas in 2023. And I really want to read this, but then I think, oh, all the books are big. Do I really want to get into a big series? And yeah, I do want to read this series. This is The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. I think this is a 5. Is this a 5 or a 4 book series? And I mean, they're not like so huge. They're like around 600 pages, 550 pages. So they're not like the biggest books ever. I don't know why it's intimidating. I think because I know that it is like multiple perspectives, and sometimes people say it's a little confusing with the multiple perspectives. And so I just need to give it a try and decide if this is a series that I want to continue. So that's on my list. And then the other one is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. And this one is because I feel like this is not really talked about anymore. It, came out several years ago. The series is done. And I don't see people reading anymore, and I'm losing interest. And so I either need to like read this year and renew my interest, or decide that I'm not interested anymore and get rid of this book. I loved the like Cinder series. What is that called? The Lunar Chronicles. But this is a little more sci-fi. Like, I guess that was sci-fi, but this I think is more like superhero kind of sci-fi, which is not usually something I'm that interested in book form. Like I like that as a movie. Don't really read superhero books. And so I'm like, do I still want to read the series? And so either I need to like try it this year, and if this doesn't get done, then I'm probably gonna just unhaul the book. So those were the 12 books that I put on my list. But since I really want to be reading books, bigger books, I decided I would pull some ones that I could substitute out. So those are my 12, but if I'm like, oh, I just really can't do a 550 to 800 page book, I have some books that are a little bit shorter, but they're still like in the 480 to 550 range. So I still count them as big books from my shelf, but they are ones that I think will read fast. So I could substitute one of these books in for one of the others and still feel like I'm accomplished. So if I end up like reading, there are 5 of them here. So even if I end up reading all 5 of these and 7 of the other ones, I still will have read 12 bigger books this year. So these are ones that I think will be a little easier, like Amber and Clay by Laura Amy Schlitz is a middle grade. So even though it's like 500 pages long, I think it'll go fast because of it being a middle grade and because some of it is in verse. So actually there's like some text at the end. So I think it's only like 515 pages. And there's some pages that have a lot of empty space because it's written in verse. So that might be one I fill in if I get to a month and I'm like, I just can't do a gigantic book. And then I have a continuation of series that's kind of fast moving. I have Fire by Kristen Kishore. And these books, when I get into them, I think I can like read it pretty quickly if I get absorbed in it, like I did with Graceling. And the font is pretty big. So I feel like this is a good like substitution for a month that I just can't handle a bigger one. Another series that I have not been continuing, I read the first one a few years ago, is Thunderhead by Neal Shusterman. I read Scythe probably 3 to 4 years ago, and I just need to continue the series or give up. And so this one I think will move pretty fast because Scythe moved pretty fast. So if I need a fast moving one or I just want to feel accomplished and continue a series, I'll pick up that one. I have Little Thieves by Margaret Owen, and this is actually on my 25 books to read this year, and so is the next one I'm going to show you. So if I end up reading this one as part of my 25 books to read in 2025, I think I can also count it off of the big books because this one I think is 515 pages. So that's a big one. And that one is a Goose Girl retelling, beginning of a series. And then the last one that is a substitute is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. And this is another beginning of a series. This is also on my 25 books to read in 2025. So this could end up being the one I read instead of the other 12. And this one has like just humongous font. So even though it looks huge, I think it'll read fast. But I'm not for sure. So those are like not necessarily the top priority, those 5, but I feel like I could, if I end up reading those, I would still feel satisfied. So technically there are like 17 options in this video of big books from my TBR that I could read and feel accomplished. And so that's it for me. Do you have large books that you have like decided you want to read in 2025? Or what is your favorite like giant book? Whether it's like fantasy or like a big Russian classic or something like that. Let me know down below and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.